Hi, everybody. I'm Jamie Keel Miller of Pandora Astrology, and with me is.
Hey guys, it's Julia Mikas, also a Pandora.
And today we want to talk with you about the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter in 0 degrees of Aquarius happening in December of 2020 and really impacting the whole year of 2021. Here's the chart, and I'm going to mark this chart up in a minute while Julia's talking, but I just want to sort of set the stage for your understanding of this. There are a couple of things all going on at once. One of them is that during 2020, in January, Pluto and Saturn formed a conjunction at 22 degrees of Capricorn, creating what is called a hot degree or a famous degree that then over the course of the year, other planets triggered and reacted to. And that is why 2020 felt as oppressive as it did because of a Saturn-Pluto conjunction. But that expires in December when Saturn moves out of Capricorn into Aquarius, and then Jupiter joins Saturn, forming a new hot degree, which we're calling inspiration plus perspiration births wisdom. And I'll say more about that in a minute. So we've got a major tonal shift going on here, away from the heaviness, the sense of burden and oppression of Capricorn, and towards a sense of freedom and I'm going to call it like innovation and progress that comes with Aquarius. So the stats are, this is happening on December 1st, 2020. And it is a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, which is going to be felt throughout 2021. This hot degree that's formed on December 21st is going to expire on December 28th, 2021. Therefore, it really lasts throughout the year. So these are the social planets, and they've been called the social planets by astrologers because Jupiter and Saturn used to be the outer limits of our solar system. For many hundreds of years, thousands of years really, astrologers could only work with planets that were visible with the naked eye, and that included only things out through Saturn. So Saturn was the limit of our world conceptually. And Saturn represents rules, laws, order, authority, and government, whereas Jupiter represents growth and expansion, and the creation of culture, and also the mores and ethics of a culture. So, Julia, I know you have some thoughts about Jupiter and Saturn as social planets. I wonder if you could speak to that a bit.
Sure. Well, Saturn, because it represents limitations, can also have a lot to do with, the more government side of society. You know, the side of society that tells us no, there are laws saying you can't do that, or that there's traffic infrastructure, so you can't drive on the street. You know, it's what orders us. Jupiter represents the more expansive side of our culture and social systems. So things like universities, churches, synagogues, temples, also other things that Jupiter can represent, the publishing industry, how we get information. That's another very important side of it. And it's interesting because this conjunction happens every few decades. And generally, I've noticed that when people have it in their chart, in a natal chart, it tends to produce people who are fairly solid citizens because, Jupiter and Saturn both represent law and order to some extent too. So generally makes, a good solid citizen who has it in their chart.
Yes, indeed. I think one of my favorite analogies that I think of, especially when I see Jupiter and Saturn conjunct in a chart, is when you think of a balloon, right? The balloon without any hot air in it is just a little limp, bit of rubber on the ground. And that's Saturn, which is structure, but without anything inside it. And Jupiter represents the hot air, the helium, that without the structure of the balloon will just dissipate into the air. But when you put the two of them together, you have liftoff. You have all of the promise and the inspiration and the excitement, enthusiasm of Jupiter, plus the structure, the ability to, the rubber hitting the road, if you will, the execution of Saturn. So boom, liftoff. It's a great combination for that reason. So these two planets form a cycle, which can be called the social responsibility cycle, and they form a conjunction like this every 20 years or so. And what's interesting is that this conjunction tends to happen in elemental waves that last about 160 to 200 years, following which there will be a sort of a mutation into a different element. We are at the end of an elemental wave right now. We have, it began in the middle 1800s, and Jupiter and Saturn's conjunctions happening every 20 years began to happen in earth signs. So at the beginning of the 1900s already, this conjunction was in an earth sign cycle. In 1901, it happened in Capricorn. In 1921, it happened in Virgo. In 1940, it happened in Taurus. So as you can see, it tends to go a full cycle and 1/3 of a cycle when it makes its next conjunction. In 1961, it happened in Capricorn again. In 1980, there was the first mutation conjunction where Saturn and Jupiter begin to shift into the next element, and that one was in Libra. In 2000, it reverted to Earth and happened in Taurus, and the current one is in Aquarius, 0 degrees, and they're going to continue happening in air signs now because the mutation is over. This is the actual shift, and they're going to go on happening in air signs for another 160 to 200 years. So this is a really big shift for that reason. The mutation, the shifting part is over, and now we get to like actually engage this new gear, which is airy, which is cerebral, which is heady, which is going to have to do with logic and rationality, data, information, science, fact. All of those things are going to really come up in the emphasis of this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction cycle. Another thing I wanted to mention is that there is always a final phase in every cycle, which is called the mop-up period. And in the case of Jupiter-Saturn, it's as Jupiter is moving through the last sign before it is going to conjunct Saturn. And we've been in this mop-up period all year during 2020. And the mop-up period feels like a time of confusion and disorder and mystery. It's characterized by the 12th house and Pisces because it's the 12th and final phase before a new phase begins. And often during it, it's like many currents are shifting. There is no clear direction. And then as the new cycle comes in, there is this sense of choosing a direction. So I've been talking about that Jupiter plus Saturn means wisdom. And the reason for that is that Jupiter promises, but Saturn delivers. Saturn makes you follow through, presses you to execute whatever it is that you promised. Jupiter will just, mouth off. Jupiter is the big voice, the broadcasting voice that doesn't listen, just mouths off. And Jupiter will make endless promises without caring whether they ever actually happen. But Saturn is the one to make sure that they happen. So, Julia, I'm wondering what your thoughts are about the kind of wisdom that might be generated by Saturn making us take responsibility and Jupiter expanding us and giving us hope and positivity, all in the arena of Aquarius.
Yeah, I mean, it's those two forces together. The wisdom is the wisdom of balance, the middle path, not being too excessive, not being too overly idealistic, but not being too pessimistic, not being too sort of self-restrictive in a lot of ways. And in the sign of Aquarius and in the sign of progress, I think that wisdom of not, especially when it comes to social reform or with any other new technologic advances, maybe to expand but to expand with a certain level of ethics and that type of awareness in there too.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think we're really, really ready for that. Yep. All right. Well, I think that's all we've got for you about this today. This video is found on our YouTube channel, Pandora Astrology, in the December 2020 news playlist. And we'll be building a playlist for 2021 pretty shortly. You'll find this one there along with other news of the year. And you can always find us on our website, pandoraastrology.com, where in the navigation bar you can find the forecast for the month, horoscopes, and you can get readings and classes. And until next time, we'll see you around the cosmos. Bye.
Bye-bye.